Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call for a roll call of all the governing board members, starting from my far right.
Amy Carney.
Zach Lindsay.
Libby Hartwells.
Karen Warner.
And I'm Julie Sinowski. All governing board members are present. That is a quorum. Moving on to the approval of the agenda, I'd like to pull 7K, and that is a personnel. If you're looking at your agenda, that is the personnel action items from September 12th to October 3rd. And when we get to that point in our agenda, I will ask Alexis Wilson to address that concern. Are there others? Board Member Carney.
Thank you, President Sinowski. Yes, I would like to amend the agenda, moving item 9, governing board reports, back to its regular spot on the agenda as item number 4 before public comments. And I would also like to pull from consent agenda item G, approve the sole and or single source procurements for 2023-2024 fiscal year for Prisms of Reality.
Okay, Board Member Warner.
I'd like to pull 7I from consent agenda, please.
Board Member Kearney, can you please repeat your first
Yes.
issue? Thank you.
I'd like to amend the agenda to move item 9, governing board reports, back to its regular spot on the agenda, item number 4 before public comments.
Are you making a motion to do that right now?
Yes, I'm making a motion to amend the agenda.
Is there a second to that particular motion?
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Warner. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. No.
No.
No.
That motion does not pass. The agenda is as it is amended with items G, I, and K pulled for further discussion. All right, we're going to move on.
We need to approve that amendment, so the separate one to rearrange, so
Right.
we have to adopt the agenda with those items.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended at this time. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hart, is that Dr. Hartwells?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hartwells, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. The agenda has been approved as amended. We're going to move on to our student and staff. Well, actually, I'm going to make a statement about our meeting decorum before we go any further. I'm going to read our statement of decorum. Citizens attending and/or participating in the Scottsdale Unified School District meetings, either in person, virtually, or telephonically, are required to observe the same rules of order and decorum applicable to members of the governing board and our district staff. Unauthorized remarks or demonstrations from members of the audience, yells, outbursts, and/or disruptions are not permitted. Members of the public are not allowed to approach the dais at any time while the governing board meeting is in session without express permission from the governing board president. I'd also like to add to the decorum statement that it is not appropriate for any person to single out anyone else's individual child through public comment or our employees by name. We have mechanisms in place to deal with complaints about employees, and in regards to our students, making false statements about others based on hearsay or assumptions is flat out wrong. I want to just remind our community that we set a precedence to our children. We serve through our actions, and I'd like our community to respect our challenging work and our view that our children's needs through the lens of empathy. We respect all individuals' needs of our students in our district. We respect the rights of our parents to make decisions on behalf of their own children, and we are committed to protecting the privacy rights of all of our students and their families. And with that, I would like to move on to our student and staff recognition and celebrations. Dr. Menzel.
Well, good evening, President Sinowski, Vice President Werner, and members of the governing board. I want to begin by noting that October is National Principals Month. While we are appreciative year-round of the many ways in which our principals make Scottsdale Unified, our schools, and our students better, We are pleased that an entire month is dedicated to celebrating them and their work. Scottsdale Unified's 30 principals are committed to their students and their success, and to their staff, the parents, and the community. They never lose sight that their leadership has a defining impact on their campus culture and climate, and it's not an easy task, to be sure, yet our principals adeptly juggle their many roles. They are there at 0 hour in the morning to pop in the morning. They pop in on classes, greet, chat with, and redirect students, provide professional advice to teachers and staff, lean over to pick up a piece of trash and get it to an appropriate receptacle, and always take great pride in their school's good standing in their community. Long after the stadium and stage lights have dimmed, they go home, answer emails, put their own children to bed, or just kiss them on the head if they're already asleep, rest their own heads for a few hours, and then the next morning they get up and do it all over again. It's an exhausting and grueling schedule. The bottom line is that Scottsdale Unified would not be the excelling organization that it is without the frontline work done every day after day, by our building leaders. And I want to take this opportunity to share my gratitude for them this evening. I'd like to invite the principals, I've seen some in the room tonight, that are here to please stand so that we can thank you for what you do for Scottsdale Unified. Thank you. We truly appreciate you. The next celebration is going to be an emotional one, but fantastic to be sure. And I'm going to invite District Athletic Director Nathan Slater to share with us a compelling story. Mr. Slater.
President Sanowski, Vice President Warner, members of the board, Dr. Menzel, Ms. Wagner, I'd like to invite Nathan Higuera, his family, the Coronado admin team on up, and also the firefighters from Engine 601, the A group and the A shift and the C shift, so everybody come on up. As everybody walks up, Nathan Higuera had a life-threatening event here on campus at Coronado, and he's joined by his mother Carmen and his grandmother Sol Espinosa, and also we have Principal Palatucci, if she's here somewhere, and Athletic Director Robert Villa. And as you'll hear, a true hero is head coach Rick Benjamin. And also the A shift is the shift that responded to the incident that occurred with Nathan. And we have firefighters Patrick Wyatrolic and Nick Bright, as well as engineers Todd Williams. And the C shift that just left is here to support their crew and also Nathan as well. Coronado's varsity football team took the field the morning of August 23rd at approximately 6 a.m. to conduct walkthroughs for that week's games. After stretching and warm-ups and helmets, Nathan Higuera was discussing his blocking assignment with assistant coach Rick Wilson when Nathan dropped himself to the ground and began to present signs of a seizure, laying on his back. Coach Wilson hollered over to head coach Rick Benjamin, who rushed to Nathan. Coach Benjamin immediately initiated the emergency response plan, directed Coach Wilson to call 911, told another coach to open the ambulance gate, and turn Nathan on his side. Nathan's best friend, Dominic Jordan, stayed with Coach Benjamin and Nathan, while the rest of the team gave them space. Dominic and Coach Benjamin gently removed Nathan's helmet to assist his breathing, but after several minutes of constant eye contact, Coach Benjamin noticed that Nathan's agonal breathing was more shallow and his heart rate faint. Coach Benjamin flipped Nathan on his back and began administering CPR. When the paramedics began to come onto the field, Nathan's condition continued to worsen. The paramedics arrived to care for Nathan. The team moved back to the locker room, and Coach Benjamin immediately began contacting Nathan's family. Engine 601's A shift, with the gentleman I just introduced, are from Scottsdale's Fire Department, which was dispatched that day. Luckily, the station is just south of the high school on Miller Road, north of McDowell. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional, dude. The paramedics performed compressions and CPR for approximately 15 minutes. This included the use of a defibrillator twice and 3 rounds of epinephrine until Nathan had a pulse and a heart rhythm. Nathan was then transported to Honor Health Scottsdale Osborne Hospital for emergency treatment and further assessment. Coach Wilson joined Nathan in the ambulance, and Coach Benjamin followed behind and met Nathan's mother, Carmen, at the hospital. At Osborne, Nathan was placed on a ventilator. and was then determined that he would be transported to Phoenix Children's Hospital via helicopter. During this difficult time, Carmen, Nathan's mom, stayed in regular communication with Coronado Athletic Director Robert Villa and Nathan's coaches regarding Nathan's status. The doctors determined that Nathan had a condition called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, which is a rare heart condition present at birth that typically displays symptoms anywhere between the ages of 11 and 50. Nathan remained intubated until Saturday, August 26, when the doctors were able to remove him from the ventilator and awaken him. Nathan began his recovery, and where they were able to complete an ablation procedure to repair Nathan's heart on August 31st. Nathan was discharged from the hospital the next day, 9 days after falling to the ground at Coronado High School. Nathan's strength grew daily, and he was able to return to school on Monday, September 11th. His class schedule has been modified to allow him not to exert himself. And Nathan also is not going to be a part of the playing team, but he is a part of the team and joined the football team that very week that he returned to school. If this story doesn't put chills down your spine, I don't know what will. Sometimes things need to be put in perspective, like wins and losses aren't more important than a young man's life, and these fine individuals saved Nathan on the ground that day, as well as Mr. Benjamin. You're a hero, Coach Benjamin. And Nathan, it's great that we had an opportunity to celebrate you, obviously, and what you went through, but also to celebrate the community that Coronado is, with your family, with the firefighters that that work right down the street, and obviously with the Coronado admin team, as well as our partners at Honor Health and our athletic trainers. So it's a great celebration for you and for all of us. So thank you, and for letting us be a part of what you had to go through, and we're just happy that you're here. Give it up for Nathan again. And as promised, we have some challenge coins, and we're going to go outside and take some photos so we can get those to Honor Health and to your guys' folks as well that want them. So thank you all.
Thank you. Nathan, we're so glad you were able to be here with us this evening, and so appreciative for the work of the first responders as well as the coach. And we look forward to hearing more of your successes in the future, but thank you for being here.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, when the board met last month, I referenced that the following day we would learn the names of our seniors who are semifinalists in the 2024 National Merit Scholarship Program competition. We're pleased to report that there are 20 SUSD semifinalists. Their names are on the board. And as they go through the process, we will be sure to provide updates to let you know how they're progressing through the process. But we are truly grateful to be able to celebrate these 20 fine individuals from our Scottsdale schools. And with that, I turn it back to you, President Sanowski.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. Yes, we have a lot to be thankful for of the work of our community members as well as our employees. It's important for us to be able to celebrate our successes. This putting in place measures that help students excel is the purpose of our work. And I recognize that many of the accomplishments that do take place throughout our district do not always make it up to the dais here or in our business meetings. However, that does not make them less significant. I've stated before that it's important for our governing board to be invested in recognizing our successes and supporting our superintendent and district employees and leading our district towards a better future. And if you know anything about our superintendent, you know that being in the spotlight is often the furthest thing from his mind. And I'd like to, we have one more celebration. I'm going to turn this over to board member Dr. Hart-Wells. Dr. Hart-Wells?
Thank you, President Sanowski. First, I want to thank the Scottsdale Fire Department and Coach Benjamin. That was not just a chill down your spine, but really heartwarming, and I'm glad we led with that. So thank you. So on to our last but not least celebration this evening. In my time serving on the Scottsdale Unified School District's governing board, Dr. Scott Menzel has shown an unwavering commitment to all students, to our teachers, to our school leaders and our district staff, to providing outstanding academic opportunities to our students in excellent learning environments, to the safety of our school campuses, and to the well-being of all. It's a remarkable accomplishment in just 3 years in your role, the first of which you may all recall was during a global pandemic. Dr. Menzel has withstood challenges from within and outside our community and has done so with wisdom and grace. And if you ask him why he keeps coming to work every day with a smile on his face, he's going to tell you it's because kids. And it's for these reasons and many more that we congratulate Dr. Menzel tonight on having been chosen recently as a champion of public education by the Save Our Schools Arizona's Superintendent of the Year, actually. And I want to thank, we actually have two guests from Save Our Schools Arizona this evening, Nikki Indukovich, thank you, and Tyler Couch, who are here with us this evening. And this is a nonprofit community-based organization whose tagline is Strong Schools, Strong State. I think we can get on board with that. And the organization's community manager. So thanks for joining us this evening. And we want to thank you, Dr. Menzel, for continuing to inspire us, our students, the organization, and our community with your leadership. So congratulations.
Thank you for sharing that great information with us, Dr. Hartwells, and congratulations, Dr. Menzel. And I'll also note that he serves many roles as a professional in our state and even mentors other superintendents. So his excellence and in thought and ideas extend far beyond our Scottsdale Unified School District. Thank you again. We're going to move on to agenda item 4, which is a public comment portion of our meeting. I'd like to remind the public of the expectations following the decorum statement, and also to remind the public that they have opportunities to communicate through emails to the governing board members at any time. And you will have, looks like we have 5 requests to speak put in advance tonight, and each speaker will have 2 minutes of allotted time. I'd like to ask that you, when you approach the podium, that you state your first and last name and your association with the district. And first up is Jill Dunnekid.
Good evening. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of parents who were afraid to be here. It is not okay to present children with blatantly false information about biology. Kids cannot change their gender. They are not born into the wrong body. To teach this and to force other children to go along with the ruse is a disservice to children. To hide it from parents is criminal. But this is what's happening in Scottsdale Unified. That gender is a choice is being taught as fact in AP psychology. Some teachers promote pronouns as a choice in their email signature lines. Library books about gender identity are available for students. Students are recruited to Unitown and sexuality clubs that teach kids that there are more than 2 genders. And now parents are reporting that students are being allowed to use the bathroom of their choice based on their imagined gender. Consider the liability when, not if, a female student is sexually assaulted due to a school policy. Imposing this belief system on Scottsdale's children is also hurting enrollment. Women who came before us have fought for equal rights, yet those who support gender ideology are undoing all the progress, putting our girls at risk by removing sex-specific spaces and allowing boys to take the lead in women's sports. Boys also have a right to their own spaces. This board must act now to remove all gender ideology rhetoric from classrooms, libraries, and clubs. Scottsdale Unified does not support all students when they ignore the rights and safety of girls, nor when staff encourages a child to adopt false information and then affirms their beliefs. Education filled with rhetoric is not a world-class education. Thank you.
Jeff Rattay, followed by Mike Bengert. Jeff Rattay, followed by Mike Bengert.
Once again, this evaluation is completely falsified. School board policy requires that I read this, comment on it, and it must be signed by myself and a district administrator. That part is completely blank. It was secretly placed in my personnel file. Without this form, I would be subbing, coaching, and doing my veteran presentations in the Scottsdale schools. Shortly after it was discovered, the chief advocacy officer of the Scottsdale Education Association noted that, based on their perception of how this director operates, there are likely scores of derogatory documents in teachers' files that they don't know about. We met in Dr. Menzel's office. He said he needed time to check it out. I asked, what is your timetable? He said he would get back to us in a month. That was a lie. He never did. A week before class began, I received an email from Dr. Menzel. The district lawyer said, you're an at-will employee, so basically get lost. Isn't that right, Dr. Menzel? I'm walking around with shrapnel in my head, and this law firm's telling you that you can put the screws to me because I'm an at-will employee. And sure enough, last January, I was coaching at Kokopah Middle School, which I've done for 7 years, and your office notified the principal that I would no longer be a paid coach, but I would be a volunteer for the next 10 weeks. And it gets worse. My brother is a legendary high school football coach. He has 9 state championships. And for the past 3 years, he's been the 8th grade flag football coach at Kokopah, and I've been the 7th grade. Earlier this year, the principal at Kokopah notified both of us that we would not be able to coach at Kokopah anymore. This vendetta that you have covered up, President Sanowski, with Dr. Menzel is continuing. Now, this is my 5th appearance at this school board meeting. In the last 2 meetings, you told the lawyer to get in touch with me and explain what's going on, and she has ignored me.
Mr. Bengert, followed by Nick Sethi.
My name is Mike Bengert, and I'm a grandparent here in the district. Board President Shanowski, at the last board meeting, I spoke about how SUSD was not honest with parents about the nature and purpose of the various extracurricular clubs and activities that SUSD endorses. I mentioned Unitown, Minitown, and how students are secretly being exposed to gender identity, sexual orientation, and social justice lessons. After I spoke, you said that parents had to sign permission slips for Unitown, the implication being that the parents were in fact aware of the activities. The truth is they are not aware, so how can they provide informed consent? If parents are informed, then I would like you to explain an email from a parent to Dr. Hirsch. The email is posted on the Scottsdale United's website, but you might have missed it, so I'll go over it here. The parent had questions about Unitown, so she reached out to a counselor who said what a privilege it was to be invited and that it was a leadership training retreat. The counselor said they do not provide more info or sample curriculum to parents because they want it to be a surprise for the kids. He said the biological males who identified as a female could be assigned to rooms with actual biological females. I quote, "If I had known that to start with, I could have saved a lot of time. I have some concerns about that arrangement. If the district wants to support those arrangements in retreats and they don't think it's an issue, they should be transparent. It made me feel like they were hiding something from me, and as a parent sending my kid on an overnight trip, I should know these things. Some of the curriculum from that program was leaked out. If the curriculum that leaked out is real, wow, I'm really disappointed in our district for not being transparent about what this program includes. If the district invites kids on a retreat and there will be controversial subject matter and they approve of said subject matter, they should have nothing to hide and be transparent with the parents," end quote. SUSD emails also show that middle school principals have been working with high schools counselors to actively recruit middle school students to Minitown. Of course, being a trained professional educator and expert, I'm sure you can explain how calling it a leadership training retreat is really being honest and transparent with the parents of SUSD. If the district is going to continue to offer sexual gender identity camps, at least be honest about it. Parents in SUSD want true professional educators.
Nick Sethi, followed by Susan Winder.
Good evening, President Sanowski, Vice President Warner, board members, Dr. Menzel, and Ms. Wagner. I'm Nikhil Sethi, a senior at Saguaro High School, and I don't often take the time to speak, but today I felt I must. As many of us have seen in recent years, some political voices have utilized the local and national stages to take against teachers, accusing them of indoctrination of students, teaching students to hate, and much more. As many of us know from personal experiences, these accusations couldn't be further from the truth. However, though it seems to be caused by a lack of understanding, members of our own community have reinforced these inaccurate accusations. At a recent board meeting, I witnessed a fellow community member accuse a teacher of fabricating a faulty curriculum because that teacher taught material describing a basic political theory that they found upsetting. A discussion of a common principle was turned into a battle card against this teacher, something that has become somewhat of a regular occasion at these meetings. While such incidences may seem insignificant, they contribute to the disrespect that teachers face every day. Though all educational material may not be fully understood by those without proper background knowledge, there is no excuse not to speak factually and properly research claims before we make them. Continuously berating teachers only contributes to the loudness of harmful political agendas which seek to disrupt the place of public school teachers in our community. I encourage us all to do better by taking the time to ensure our accuracy and by showing respect to the teachers who seek to better our lives every day. Thank you.
Last up is Susan Winder.
Good evening, Dr. Menzel and board members. I'm Susan Winder, and my grandchildren attend your schools. I am sure you're thinking right now that I'm one of those usuals, and you would be correct, and I will continue to be until SUSD and Arizona handles their education system much like Florida, who chooses to respect and honor parent input and refuses to allow national political controversy to seep into public education. What I'm showing you is a book, People of Pride, 25 Great LGBTQ Americans. That is in the Kokopah Library and most likely in other libraries. The sad part about this book is 99% of the people in the book are well known for not being LGBTQ, but for their many talents and services they brought to the world. First, know that I have nothing against gay and lesbian people. In fact, when I was a principal, I had 3 gay lesbian teachers, 2 females and 1 male, and they were 3 of the best teachers that I had ever encountered. However, the last thing they wanted was to be known by their sexual choice, as it would have brought controversy to their skill. I wonder if there are any books in SUSD libraries about great white supremacists, or about great obese people, or about great people who were midgets. Even better, I wonder if there are any books in the SUSD libraries about the disciples, about Jesus or Pontius Pilate. I suspect the answer to these examples is no. Why does SUSD as a system allow totally controversial political issues to enter the classroom? It takes focus off of the teaching and learning of reading, writing, math, and civics, which is clearly demonstrated by your state test scores as well as the ACT and SAT scores. Lastly, having such books available for students under the age of 18 to check out infringes upon parents' rights to ensure that such topics are not part of their students' reading and learning. It is my prayer that the election in 2024 will change the focus of the board members here in Paradise Valley School District and all over this state.
That concludes our public comment portion of our business meeting this evening. And with that, we move on to agenda item 5, superintendent's comments. Dr. Menzel.
Well, good evening again, President Sanowski, Vice President Werner, and members of the governing board. We do have a lot to cover this evening, but I do want to note a few things to celebrate. This past weekend, the Sisters in STEM event was held at Saguaro High School. It was my first time to actually be able to attend the event, and what a joy to watch our students engaging with young learners with hands-on science experiences. I actually got to do some of them myself. The upside-down goggles did throw me for a loop, but so many amazing learning opportunities, reinforcing the value and importance of science education. So I want to give a shout-out to all of the Saguaro students, those in the MSA and those who were just in the school who wanted to support it, and Nikhil was one of those there, working with our students. It was really fantastic. So I want to celebrate our students for that event. Secondly, I want to celebrate the Arcadia Marching Band. I was informed earlier today that they placed first in a recent competition. So their legacy of success continues. And it's one of those things where we never get tired of celebrating our students and their success. The 2 other things of note: one, as we're quickly approaching the end of the first quarter, we'll be pulling together as a leadership team an update on our key performance indicators based on metrics where we can provide an update in terms of status, so that you'll have that as we head into quarter number 2. And then finally, because we are heading into fall break, I want to thank everyone for their hard work in this first quarter. It hasn't always been easy, but it's always important work because kids. And so I want to wish everyone a safe and happy fall break as we get ready for quarter number 2. And with that, I'll conclude my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. We're going to move on to our information and discussion items. There will be no action taken on any of these items. This is simply for information and discussion, as it states. We're going to start off with our Native American programs update, and Dr. David Praninsky and Sheila Cyprus are going to be presenters this evening, I believe.
Good evening, Governing Board and Dr. Menzel and Gladys. Nice to see you all again. I'm losing my voice. I think it's from the smoke and whatever and allergies. But this is my biannual kind of update, and this is over our fall is dealing with of what we've done with our summer school program and our numbers at the end of last school year and what we are at currently so far. Not used to this setup here, so I don't know if does it change on its own? There it is. Okay. All right, thanks. This is the 2022-23 school enrollment count. This was done by the last day of May 24th, and as you can see with our Native American students, in each learning community, we had a total of 483 Native American students. This is, we used to have a lot more before, but with the pandemic, that kind of decreased our numbers, but we're slowly getting back up there. So as of last year, it was 483. We took a look at our average attendance rate for each of our Native American students in these school sites. And as you can see, our percentages are not quite up in the high 90s like we would like to see them. But our goal, just like along with the district, we would like to see a 2% increase of attendance starting from last year into this year. So by the end of the school year, we will revisit that, and hopefully by then we will have at least the 2%, which is what we're kind of lining with our school district's policies. So graduation rate. Graduation rates are actually getting a little bit better. So I've done the 5-year study on this. As you can see in the very bottom, the 2022-23 school year, we had a 90% graduation rate at Arcadia High School, up from the previous year of 75%. Chaparral High School was 100. It unfortunately went down a little, and it was due to some students that we had lost that were also aligned in with SPED, so they have the extra few years to continue their educational degrees. So Coronado, we went up from 80% to 85.71. Desert Mountain maintained its 100%, and Saguaro High School went from 70 up to 80%. So all in all, we're going up. That's the one thing that we were looking at. In the SUSD summer school program, we had first session and second session. So the first session, we had 41 participants had registered with them. 3 of them had withdrawal, so we ended up with 38 students total. And out of the 38 students, 100% of them all passed their summer school courses that they signed up for. And as I've told you before, these are not just students that are replacing an F grade. These are also students that are taking classes to get ahead so they can do other sports or college bridge programs in other areas. Second session, we had 43 students, 1 withdrawal. And then we had a total of 42, which also the same thing. We had 100% passing. And I could not stress enough that this is not just from our kids working and parents being involved, but it was basically from the staff people that I work with during the summer that work with our Native students, that go into the classrooms, work with those kids, work with the teachers, and then they work with the kids outside. We have we call it an after summer school program. And also we notice with them is that they've been coming in between on their class breaks, and they've enjoyed it because we actually have little snacks, granola bars, water, Gatorade for them to keep them motivated and keep their brains active. So that's been But one of the things, and I just wanted to express that I I just don't know how to express the gratefulness I have for these 3 staff members that worked this summer. And one of them was Miss Perea from Coronado. She's the actual liaison there. And then we all have Miss Tosi from Arcadia as the liaison. And we have one of the Saguaro teachers that always works and helps out with our program, Miss McCandlish. She also helped out. And so it's been really great having them there. And I just wanted to say this is why we had the 100%, because we all work together. For the 23-24 school enrollment, and this was taken as of September the 19th. As you can see, I broke them down into the learning communities, and these are just students that are only identified as American Indian Alaskan Native. That is in their resolved race that they've chosen. We have 466 Native American students currently. We went back and looked at the missing pieces of some students who don't hit a particular query when we look for our American Indian students due to the fact that they have chosen their resolved race as being Hispanic or 2 or more. We looked at those numbers, and if you can see, it jumped to 827 students. So we've are looking at these numbers and hopefully to get the identifying program forms that we need for them so that this will help in allocation of our grant funding. So I've had this come up because I've had a lot of people have mentioned about why are they Hispanic, but yet they're Native American. Well, if you look at the history of where our people come from, we have Pascua Yaqui students that are on the other side of the border as well. We have Tohono O'odham that are also on the other side of the border. So, and a lot of the surnames and Mexican nationals that have been here have, married into Native families, so they've taken their last names. So that's where a lot of that comes from. So we were very impressed when we saw these numbers. This is something we have been trying to locate for many years, and I could not express the thanks to the CIMAR department for working out a query, working very hard, and getting this information for me. So now there's more kids that I can go track down and welcome into the program and welcome into our district. Our Title VI allocation this year is $112,489. This has increased by about $600 from last year. As we continue, we are still maintaining our full-time employee at Arcadia High School that's paid out of the grant, but we also have the positions of Coronado and Saguaro we added on this year that are both funded through the desegregation fund. So now we have a staff of 3 besides just me. We're still continuing the after-school tutoring program to pay for any supplementals for that, high school class fees, summer school, student supplies, high school, summer school staff. As you can see, we do quite a bit under our Title VI. We have cultural field trips for some of the students. We have speakers, presenters. We even also offer conferences. If we have any of the other programs would like to know more about our programs and so forth, they are more than welcome to join any workshop that is specifically for Native Americans, and we will cover that for them as well. We started adding on this year was the school instrumental fees. I did not realize that elementary had these fees until we started looking. One of the teachers actually approached about, can you help out a Native family? And then we kind of collaborated together and found out that we have a lot of Native students that they weren't speaking up. And that's just kind of normal. They just don't say anything, we were very quiet. So we've also picked that up for them this year, and we're also still continue on doing the PSAT testing fees for our juniors that want to try the test and also try for other scholarships, and we're still doing our AP testing, which this year I've probably spent $2,000 so far on AP testing. That's going to be coming up in May. So that's a good positive thing. Our kids are reaching out and they're wanting to try something different and not just kind of be the norm of the stereotypical Native American student. Our second grant that we also allocate is our Johnson O'Malley. This is our smallest pot. This is $9,581.26. This one is the one that majority we pay for is our sports fee for our students. And as the numbers that we looked at the end of last year, we had 35 Native American students who were taking football, volleyball, cheerleading, wrestling. So that was a big jump up from what we used to see. So they're participating, they're coming in. We're also playing for dual enrollment. We've been encouraging kids to do a dual enrollment, and we also know that this year CTE is also funding dual enrollment. So we are actually Amy Downs and I, who is the director, we also have been collaborating on this since the summer. So we're kind of reaching out for that. I have a few students that need instrument rentals through middle school or high school. We've also paying for some of them to do that. And this is where our snack funding, I had to talk to state and tell them that this was actually beneficial, because normally you don't buy food with our grant monies. But we saw the need, and we needed to continue this, especially with high school kids. High school kids generally, like myself, never ate breakfast. So you're starving by the time your brain is not working. So that's where all the little snacks are coming through. And also, we've also had a few parents that just donated some to the schools for that. So, and then the JOM conference is also paid out of this. We look at the allocation of the funding is how we distribute. If we had more fees going to strictly kids, we would not be going to the conference, because like Dr. Menzel's famous thing, because kids, these are what these funds are used for. They are for the kids. And we're looking at the 24-25 school year that they are going to increase our funding. So I'm hoping next year when I come do this again, that hopefully this amount will be doubled. So keep your fingers crossed. So that's, and we've also asked because I help out with Johnson O'Malley with the state and with national level, that they are unfreezing the 1995 numbers, what Scottsdale had at 120 students, to now the current numbers that we turned in for 22-23. So, and then after that, a 6% increase of every year. So we're hoping Washington will keep it up and keep fighting for this. So we're hoping that we'll see some extra numbers. We're continuing our partnership opportunity as we did last year. We had Native Health. This year, we're also having with Phoenix Indian Center with the leadership programs and so forth. Native Health has been really helpful because of the fact we've been dealing with the sober living issues. That's just kind of handled across the state. And they've actually stepped up and gave us some information on that. So I was able to talk to some of the families that, that have family members that are dealing with that sober living. So we're kind of just trickling down the information. So that is part of our strategic goal with the community engagement and partnership. And that's pretty much it for me for this time. So any questions?
Do any governing board members have questions or comments on this topic? I see Dr. Hartwell's requesting to speak. Dr. Hartwell's.
Thank you, Board President Sanowski. Thank you, Sheila. What a great presentation and encouraging needle movement in a lot of categories. Very nice. A couple of questions. On the dual enrollment, how many students do you have this year that dual enrolled?
For dual enrollment, so
Yeah.
far we have 4 that have
4?
turned in. Yeah,
Okay.
a couple of them missed the deadline, but they're in the process of working with Maricopa Community College to see if they can still get in, because they're also going through upgrades, leaderships and so forth. SEC is down to like the 2 people trying to run that whole department along with our College Bridge program. So they're a little behind, so we're kind of using that to our advantage. So, but the kids are the ones that are actually contacting the school to see if they can still get in. If not, they've already told me that they were going to do it for the spring semester.
Okay.
So.
I just recently went through that dual enrollment process myself as a parent for my student, and was a little shocked at the price tag, to be honest with you. So I'm wondering if this might be an opportunity for looking at grants around the state to help subsidize the students beyond you have a decent list there of expenses, and that's only going to get right if this all goes well as it's going.
Yeah.
That will only increase, and that seems like a real value add for the students. And so I just asked that maybe we make that a priority. Also, you have listed PSAT fees. The district pays for PSAT fees for the sophomores across the district. So are these PSAT fees for juniors who are retaking?
Yes, they're for juniors that are
Okay.
retaking the class because
Okay.
they wanted to do better. So when they go apply for their scholarships, that will
Okay.
help and increase their chances. So we've had some kids that have asked for that. So we just continued that through the grant. The parents thought that would be a nice thing to keep continuing doing. So that's what we've done.
And so when the retake, are they juniors?
They're juniors.
Would there be a reason to not be taking the ACT or the SAT at that point, as opposed to the preliminary?
They have not expressed that, they just gone with the PSAT, but we do encourage them to try for the ACT and SATs as well. We just haven't had any kids come asking for fees for that, and they must be paying it on their own.
Okay. I think that might be something we can look into and just make sure the timing, getting the biggest bang for the buck on that one. Great. And then the last question, this is with respect to the attendance. So 2% increases is the goal. I understand the alignment with the KPIs across the district. What do you know, whether it's anecdotally or not, or otherwise, but what the contributing factors are for some of the less than 90% attendance? Is there something that, understanding what those maybe, what were the critical masses in terms of what's contributing to lower attendance, what we might be able to do to deploy resources to help?
Well, that's what we discussed in our state and federal programs meeting yesterday. We all as a group came together, and we all kind of had the same goal, attendance. And I brought up the fact that you have to look, I said, unfortunately, my kids will never be in that 95, 98 percentile attendance rate. There's too many factors already. One, the main one really is historical educational trauma. That is the biggest thing, because after speaking with a teacher friend of mine, we think of historical educational trauma or anything historical trauma as something that happened 1,000, 500, 200 years ago. But when you look back at it, it really only happened back in this last century. So a lot of these kids, education is not for them to be here, and parents don't push it because of the whole boarding school era. So a lot of those kids, they come from families where the grandparents were taken from their homes. They were, they were beaten for speaking their language. Their hair was cut. There was a lot of trauma. So that story just keeps continuing on. And as much as we can try to mend that and not be that anymore, it is always going to be there, because we as a community are we're an oral society. We tell stories. We don't have anything written. So like my grandfather, I was actually talking to a colleague today. I'm very fortunate that my grandfather went through the boarding school era. He ran away twice. They found him, they dragged him back. They did everything they could possibly do to basically break the spirit. As you know, save the man, kill the Indian. That was the goal of the United States government. So, but his idea was he finally ran away, got away, had a 4th grade education, but he didn't hold that grudge. He told us the stories. This is what I went through, but I want you to better yourself. I want you to learn. I want you to learn their ways, is how he presented it. And, go to school, do this. Be the change. Don't follow that stereotypical thing. So a lot of that is the historical trauma. You're not going to have parents wanting to send their kids to school. Second, a lot of us really look at it when you're speaking in large terms as well, very educated terms. Parents don't feel comfortable dealing with that. So if my kid's not going to go to school today, my kid's not going to go to school today. Or there's a situation of family death, something happened, so they don't call in. And then by the time they remember to call in, it's already past that deadline, because you can only, you have a certain time frame where you can turn in that absence. So that's another thing. And other things are just, like we were talking, the percentage that we have now is good because of the fact that maybe they have friends. Their friends are coming, encouraging them. Hey, come to school. We'll go hang out afterwards. So that's one of the things that we kind of look at. So there's a lot of factors. There's ceremonies coming up. Families leave for ceremonies. Some of them are dancers, so they're in these dances. They don't think that's the thing where they have to call families, or call to school. Hey, I'm going to be gone for a week, or work out something. So there's a lot of factors into it. So at this rate that we have now, to be honest, I was surprised when I looked at the percent. I thought it was actually going to be like 60s and 70s, to be honest. So for it to be there, and my goal is the 2% to increase to at least we could go along with district's KPIs on this, is a goal that I'd like to see. And then maybe next year we'll do a 3%. We're just going to see where we're going to go with this, see how we can do that. But that's where a lot of this is coming from, attendances, and then transportation. we still have families that still are dealing with the pandemic. Unfortunately, that, they're never going to find the money to go and get transportation. I've given out bus passes to kids that have asked them. We've had some families that say, oh, my kid goes to your school, they're out open enrollment. We give them a bus pass, they can get here. I mean, we can do the little things, but we can't, unless you want me to go and stand at every door and yank them out of their door or haul them in a car. I mean, if I could do that, I would do that. I would take my little car and drive around and pick them all up, but I also know that that's not feasible. So, but a lot of it is the historical educational trauma that a lot of these families go through, and the pandemic did not help because a lot of these kids lost their parents, their grandparents, somebody that they looked up to. So, but like I said, I was very fortunate in my family that my grandfather told us what happened. He told us the stories, but at the same time, encouraged us, go to school, be better, make change. This is how you make change.
Well, I like that attitude,
Yeah.
Sheila, and I appreciate your efforts to rewrite the narrative, and Dr. Praninsky, your efforts to rewrite that narrative. And these incremental advances will potentiate into a rewritten narrative.
Yeah.
We keep pushing, so thank you.
Vice President Warner.
So thank you for the update, and it's always great to hear good news and that we're heading in the right direction. I wanted to really recognize the students that participated in summer school. I think it's always so awesome when kids take advantage of the opportunity to advance ahead. I know I made my kids take summer school, and it was just for the purpose to keep them busy over the summer and to advance forward. So that you had a 100% pass rate is absolutely awesome, and congratulations to those kids.
Thank you.
Thank you for the good questions and commentary, and thank you, Ms. Supras. I have a question for you. When is the SUSD festival planned?
My cultural event?
Yes, your
I was
cultural
actually
event.
going to meet with Palatucci yesterday, but I wasn't feeling well, so I went home and had to cancel the meeting because I wanted to discuss what dates would work good for that, but it is definitely going to be into November. But we have planned, Coronado students, the Chant Club is going to have their Native American Week in November. And I think it's the 15th, it's on a Wednesday. We're going to hold our first kind of collaborative beading class and do it as a parent engagement with
Nice.
our Native parents. So we're going to have that night. So I was going to try to tie in our cultural either right before Thanksgiving or it might be after Thanksgiving. But
Great. I'll look forward to hearing about it and sharing that within our community. Thank you.
you just want some fry bread. That's what it
That was
is.
really, I actually had the burger
Oh, yeah, the burger
wrapped in
one.
the fry bread, so it was real healthy and real good for me. But that was an amazing event, and you do great work, so thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
We're going to move on to our presentation on our M&O override, district additional assistance override, and bond fiscal year 2023 report from Shannon Crozier.
Thank you. Thank you, Board President Sanowski, Vice President Warner, members of the board, Dr. Menzel and guests. Tonight we are looking at the override and bond expenditures. We have two overrides and a bond. And as part of state statute, for having those additional funds, we are required to share how the funds were used, the expenditures from last year, and the budget for this year. So the first one we'll take a look at is the maintenance and operations override that was approved by the voters in 2019. It expires on June 30th of 2025 or for the end of 24-25 school year. We, as the board, opted to go early to the voters to renew that. So that is on the ballot for November of 23. If it passes, then we'll start a new cycle for the maintenance and operations override. If it does not pass, then the board has an option to try a second time to have that approved before that begins its phase down period. This is just looking at the current pamphlet for the maintenance and operations override. The things that were on the pamphlet, what the actual was for 22-23, and the budget for 23-24. Those items, I'll just go over them real quick, were maintain current classroom ratios, all-day kindergarten, as the state does not fund all-day kindergarten, music, art, world language, athletics, and co-curricular activities, so that's some of our special programs, as well as our athletics and extracurricular activities. We have a couple of technology teachers or computer teachers that covers. Staff professional development, that was really adding additional days to the teacher contract so that they could come in before school starts, have that professional development, get things ready to go before school starts, as well as department chairs, and then provide competitive teacher pay. As you can see, the two biggest items within that are the maintain current class size ratios, as well as music, art, world language, athletics, and co-curricular activities. And then the others follow behind that with all-day kindergarten, staff development, and compensation following not far behind those areas. For the 23-24 budget, it's pretty similar to last year percentage-wise. We have a little bit more in the maintain class size ratios, but most of the percentages are pretty much in line with where we were last year. Some of that ends up as to, what do teacher salaries actually end up being, what positions are filled. That kind of drives some of these when we get to the actual, but it's looking pretty much in line with what we've done in the past. The district additional assistance override or capital override was passed by the voters in November of 2022. That took effect this current school year, so it started in school year 23-24, and that will expire in fiscal year 29-30, which seems an awful long way from now. So looking at how that was spent, that was to do curriculum materials, school and district technology, furniture, fixtures, equipment, fine arts programs, athletic programs, library materials and equipment. The original one from last year was playground equipment. For the override that we passed for this year, we added facilities to that. The original for last year, the budget was $8.5 million. It was capped at $8.5 million. You'll see that we spent 8.7. The reason is we don't spend everything every single year. There's rollover that happens. And so for 22-23, we had 8.7 in actual expenditures, the bulk of that being in technology, followed by furniture, fixtures, and equipment. For the for the pamphlet that was approved in November of 22, that took effect for this school year now, was the max was 14.5. We did not, that's based off of a 15% of our revenue control limit. We did not get to the amount that we could budget for was not quite 14.5 million. It was actually like 14.2 million. So this is just showing what the budget was in the pamphlet. What we have for the 23-24 year is based off of the full amount or the amount that we could take based off on our RCL, as well as carry forward from last year. One of the things I am really happy to say differently is that we've done moving into this year is instead of just allocating out budget to schools and saying spend as you will based on your enrollment or your ADM, we said you tell us what you need and then we'll develop the budget based off of that and allocate based off of that. So schools received a small portion of those budgets for them to do fitting within these categories. So like athletic programs received $250,000 that went straight to their schools for them to decide. But the other part of that went into for the district to look at and see what are the high needs things that we need to do with those dollars. So I feel pretty confident that we will actually spend more and carry over less moving forward because the asks were much higher than the actual budget that we had to deal with. And then the last one is the bond summary. We are nearing the end of the bond. The bond had 3 items that it was to cover. One of them was pretty significant, but to renovate, improve, and construct school facilities, including major life cycle renovations to school facilities. That was approved for $219.9 million. As you can see, we have spent almost all of that. We're down to about $14 million for this year. We have finished up most of our major renovations. We still have a couple things to do, a couple life cycle projects to do, but the big bulk school renovations and remodels have taken place. We have a little bit left in school safety measures, 82,000, and so that will be used up this year. And then pupil transportation, 992,000 left in there, and actually they're looking at a couple of bus replacements with that moving forward. So we won't get through all of that this fiscal year, I don't think, but that's where we'll be down pretty significantly after this year with what's left. Just to share some of the bond, this is the Tavon outdoor PE space that they worked on. So they didn't get like a major renovation like some of the other schools did, but they had some pretty extensive work done there and added a PE space for outdoors so that the students can be out there and enjoy the Arizona spring and fall weather. And then again on the left-hand side is the Tavon canopy that goes into their administrative office. And then our final big bond purchase this year was Pueblo remodel. So this is that parking lot is actually done now. And my understanding from Dennis and Pueblo is that parking and getting through the queue to pick students up has improved dramatically. So we're excited to hear that. So this was just as they were finishing up that parking lot. But the best pictures are of the Pueblo rebuild and the beautiful new school that those students have with lots of bright colors and just better learning spaces. And then the final part of that I think I know Dennis is pretty proud of and I'm pretty proud of as well is he has some CTE high school students that come in and they take care of taking all of the bond expenses and putting them into a document that is amazing and into Sway. And I don't know, I think I can click on this. If you go to the district website, is it gonna work? Hopefully. If you go into the district website under bond and override, it will take you to this Microsoft Sway and you can see everything. It shows every dollar that has been spent from the bond, along with pictures. It's down to like the individual purchase orders for every transaction we've done in the bond. So if you're looking for more detail on how the bond was spent, this is a great place to go. Let's see. I'll just pick Arcadia. It's gonna go. And you can see, like I said, pictures of everything that we've done since the bond started, of things that have happened, how the dollars have been used, whatnot. So that's a great tool for our community members to see just exactly how every single penny of the bond was spent. So with that, I will open it up to, if I can go back, I will open it up to questions.
Governing board members, do any of you have any questions or comments? Dr. Hartwells?
Thank you, Board President Sinowski. Thank you, Ms. Crozier, for your presentation. It was a timely one so that the community can understand the different types of permitted overrides versus bonds and the two different types of overrides. And can you just confirm, because this question has come up, as you know, at some of the town halls, the spend by the district, so there might be a carry, those are still within the permitted statutorily permitted expenditures under the overrides because of the if you could, and the alignment with the pamphlet, what the voters actually approved.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question, Dr. Hartwells. We did the timeliness of it. Yes, it is actually required for us to present this information every year by October 15th. So that's why we were doing it tonight. As for the M&O override, every penny of the M&O override is spent that year. We don't carry over M&O override dollars, but it has to be spent exactly on those categories that were approved. When it comes to the capital override dollars, the same thing. It has to be spent exactly on the categories that were approved by the voters. Those dollars do carry over and we roll them. So if you don't spend all of necessarily your If we don't spend everything within the PE category, we still keep it within, or athletic category, we still keep it within athletics. It rolls the next year, so there's a higher amount within there. But it has to be spent exactly within the categories of what's defined in the pamphlet.
Thank you. I have no
Yes.
other questions.
Board Member Carney.
Thank you, Ms. Crozer, for your presentation. I really appreciate that great level of detail on the bond override, and I'm wondering if we have the same thing for the M&O override or the DAA.
That's a great question, Board Member Carney. We don't for the M&O override because it's a little bit more difficult to separate that out. Because when you're talking about additional compensation for teachers, we have talked that we would really like to do so for the capital override. We have a vacant position in finance that if we could get that filled, that would be one of their roles and responsibilities, would be to set up that same type of smart sheets, which is what is used for the bond, for the capital override as well. So it is absolutely something we want to do. We've talked about doing. We just need to get a person that has the availability, that can do it, because it is extensive to go through every purchase and put that in there. So we're hoping to fill that position soon. And then that would be their role, is to go back from what has been spent this year, put that information in, and then keep that going moving forward.
Yeah, because I think it's really important that we have that for our taxpayers. There are a lot of questions out there on how the money is actually being spent, and so I think it's vital that we have that information for all of the overrides.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And I would like to just comment that thank you for bringing up the resource sway, because it does show with very fine granularity how our money is spent, and that is truly what transparency is all about. So I appreciate all the work behind the scenes to enter that information so it's visible to the public. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
There are no other questions at this time. Yep. Perfect. We're going to move on to 6C. It's a first read of Governing Board Policy JS regarding student restroom arrangement or accommodation. Jennifer McLennan is in the cloud to introduce this, and then Board Member Warner will lead the discussion.
Madam President, members of the Governing Board, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. So Governing Board President, Board Member Werner has presented this first read of Governing Board Policy JS. It is a policy pertaining to student restroom arrangement or accommodation that would permit any Scottsdale Unified School District student to request access to a single stall restroom at their initiative. And I would turn the platform over to Board Member Werner to provide any additional commentary that she would like to provide.
Board Member Warner.
Yes, so I had no idea you were going to be here today, Ms. McLennan. So this policy is, let me start out with, it is really our duty as board members to be compassionate and support all of our students here in SUSD. And SUSD is governed by statute and administered by policy, and we have a policy for most things. So when you send an email to the superintendent or to an administrator, they will typically check with policy with whatever your question is and cite that policy back to you in their responses, which is good governance. We don't have a policy when it comes to restrooms, and site administrators have to figure that out each year. And as we know, the last few years, we've had a lot of turnover in our site administrators. And this would really make it simple for sites to implement equitable accommodations or arrangements for students that have reasons that their parents are coming forward that they need an accommodation for restroom use. I worked with the General Counsel, Mr. Boozin, on this, and I had originally submitted a policy, and Mr. Boozin circulated it to our cabinet, and they gave some excellent feedback. And we made some changes. based upon the feedback, and the final copy is what's shown up there today. A couple of things. I did request today a job description for our janitorial staff and adding a reasonable cleaning schedule for them to ensure that any single-use bathroom is cleaned regularly throughout the day. All of our sites have single-use restrooms, whether it's in the nurse's office, the front office, the library, and so on. So it's something that's already there when a student has a reasonable need to have an accommodation that is also requested by the parent. This would not have any excessive or any new cost to it, as there's not a whole lot of accommodations happening right now, and I know that people know how to lock doors, and all of the doors on the restrooms have locks, so there would not be a need to retrofit any doors at this time. So I'm open to questions and anything that other board members have to say about it.
Thank you. At this time, I open conversation up on the topic for discussion. Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you, Board President Sanowski. I have a few questions.
Okay.
What's the impetus for this policy?
So there are many reasons that a student would need this, and it's not our job to choose the reasons. That would be between the parent and the site administrators and the students. But there are needs out there. I've had conversations with multiple parents, and it's something that we have a policy for almost everything else in our schools. And in my conversation with Mr. Buzin, he did also agree that this is something that we as a school should have.
I'll ask legal counsel their opinion in just a second. I'm asking is there a critical mass of students who are not able to get accommodations under the existing laws where accommodations are required?
So we do not have a policy for this, so in order to get an accommodation, they would have to get right now they're under 504 plans, which would require parents to take their children to the doctor and jump through the hoops of obtaining a 504, which I've done myself. One of my students had a 504, and it's not an easy route. And this would just simplify that. And again, we would have a policy that site administrators could go back to, and it would just make things much more solid and simple.
I too had a student with a 504, so that same. I'm not sure that. Okay, I'm still a little confused on what the actual impetus for the policy. That we need a policy for everything is not a reason; it's a rationalization. What about? Do you feel, based on the diligence you've done, that there are principals and the assistant principals haven't been accommodating students, that we would need a policy requiring?
As a matter of fact, I received a phone call just this year where they were asking what the policy was for the restroom policy when someone needed an accommodation.
So okay. And the data that we actually received, there's 3 students who have accommodations currently. That doesn't seem like a critical mass to me. And then because you commented that there's no additional costs, that's contrary to the data that we received, that it would require costs in order to comply at the outset, 1. And then 2, so that's just a fact. But the question for you is, and I believe this was in the original request, what paragraph is it? The third full paragraph, starting with any person whose written request. Maybe for the community, we could scroll the screen down so that folks can see. Thank you very much. The next to last paragraph, that establishes a legal burden of proof on the district. And my question for Mr. Buzin is, does that require a legal liability for the district? Or Ms. McLennan, I don't need to put you on
Thank
the
you,
spot.
Dr. Hartwells and Vice President Werner, members of the governing board. This is my first board meeting as general counsel, and I'm happy to be here. This was a policy that Mrs. McLennan originally worked on, and so we agreed that she would be here to answer questions. I don't really want us to cross swords with our legal advice for the benefit of the district, so I would defer to her on that.
Fair enough,
if
fair enough. Ms.
that's okay.
McLennan?
Yes, Dr. Hartwell's, Board Member Werner, and members of the governing board. I believe the paragraph you're asking about starts with, "This policy does not prohibit the district."
No, I'm actually asking about the burden of proof that the district would be imposed on the district of the undue hardship, which is not defined.
So the concept of undue hardship is defined under ADA law, under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so my review of this paragraph would indicate that it would have the same connotations and definitions as provided both in the regulatory guidance and the case law as what is an undue burden under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a high burden to meet.
Thank you, Ms. McLennan. So what I'm understanding then is there is overlap with existing federal law, at least to some extent. And thank you, and I have no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hartwells. Board Member Werner.
To answer your question about the cost. So, Ms. McLennan, who were the people behind the district admin recommended that the locks be retrofitted with a occupied or vacant locks as opposed to just people locking the door?
Madam President, Board Member Werner, so in reviewing Board Member Werner's request for this policy to be considered, the district administration gathered some additional information to present to the governing board so that you can adequately consider this policy. One of the pieces of information was what the existing status of restrooms in the district is. So which buildings have restrooms, which facilities have single stall restrooms that are available to any student who might request under this policy. And it was the recommendation of the facility management for the district that if restrooms are going to be accessed by both students and staff, that doors be retrofitted.
And so to answer my question, what are the names of these administrators?
No.
It's my understanding that that information was gathered by Dennis Roller.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rayler, would you like to weigh in here in this conversation?
So as I mentioned
Hold on. I apologize. I had no intention of putting you on the spot or having you up here. I was just trying to gather a name of who was behind the
fine.
email. So I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
President Sanowski, Vice President Warner, members of the board, when we surveyed the schools, all the single-use bathrooms have a lock of some kind. Some of them are very similar to the little hole in the lever set, like at your home, that you can just push something in. And so and many of those single-use bathrooms are currently used by staff only. And so if we were to put a situation in place where students were using those bathrooms as well, we would want to do like we do in our public front-facing bathrooms. If you look at any of our lobbies that we've retrofit for security, and we have the front, that bathroom right up front there, all of them have the occupied vacant turn button to make sure that people know who's in there or that there's someone in there. Rather than trying the door, knocking on the door. It's just one of those things that it would just, if we're mixing adults and children, which we really don't like to do in the bathrooms, we would make sure that that's happening. So, and the cost depends on the setup for the door. There's something called a mortise lock. It's a mechanical piece that's inside the door. It's much more expensive than a simple lever set. So the cost can vary. The frame setup can vary. So there's some varied costs.
But yes, all doors lock currently.
Thank you.
Okay?
Are there other questions? Okay, then I will take my turn. In our Scottsdale School District, we have always attempted to address the specific needs of our students, whether there is a document requiring it or just simple common sense and human decency. And I look at the non-discriminative practices that are in place via laws as superseding any policies that we have in place in this district. We provide those provisions not just through 504 accommodation plans or individual education plans known as IEPs, but we make special accommodations in a respectful manner according to our students' individual needs. That's not open to interpretation by someone's opinion. It's according to our students' needs. And I think our public has to be very aware of the fact that our teachers and principals do their best to do the right job, the right thing every single day. It seems right now that this proposal is truly in search of a problem. I feel like we are meeting the needs. I don't receive commentary from principals, from teachers, from students, from neighbors, from community members, their concerns about bathroom use. Ms. Werner has stated multiple times that her primary objective is really to improve student academic outcomes. I agree with that. Then why are we spending time communicating about bathroom needs? Why is this considered to be a policy need? You know, I think that this recent, very recent conversation in our society where people are concerned about the bathroom needs, the genitalia of our students is super concerning. The idea that we're going to be driven by fear or lack of empathy to make decisions on behalf of our families, I think is absurd. I do respect parents' rights. If my child needed special accommodations, I would work with my building level to meet the needs of my student, not require me as a parent to document for public record students' needs, my child's needs. I think it's absurd to be concerned about this. We're 126 years in Scottsdale schools. We have met the bathroom needs of our students. I find it extremely offensive that members in our community, or worse yet, people coming from outside of our community, to make this an issue. I don't know about anyone in this room or watching tonight, but when you use the restroom, how many of you are concerned about who's in there? My mother, who is 82 years old, I asked her, has she ever been concerned about going into the bathroom? And she said, no, I use the restroom, I wash my hands, and I exit. So for those of you who raised your hand, it's concerning to me. It's concerning to me that you have these issues wanting to discuss other children's and other families' rights to privacy and respect. I feel we already meet the needs of our students without such tracking and monitoring policies in place, and I realize that we are not taking action on this evening, but I feel like this is a huge waste of time. Board Member Carney.
Thank you, President Sanowski. I just have to say that I think it's very concerning to me that you are calling a fellow board member policy absurd, and we all have a right to bring forward what we want and without ridicule from a fellow board member. I would like to say that.
Please stop, or we will recess our meeting until we can have. we will continue with our business meeting without interruptions, or we will recess till we can feel we can have a safe and secure meeting environment.
But I would just like to continue. Like I said, we are all allowed to bring our voice. We have been elected to be here and bring a voice, and to be calling another board member's idea absurd is offensive. And I would just like to say that I think bringing proactive policy is what we need. We don't need to continue to keep reacting to things happening in our community. Proactive policy is what we need, and parental permission absolutely is needed.
Board Member Carney, I appreciate your commentary. I don't understand who would benefit from this. I was not calling Board Member Werner absurd. I was stating that this is unnecessary policy, and we have laws in place, non-discriminative laws already in place, that supersede any policy anyway. Board Member Werner.
So I want to set the record straight. A student's file is not public record. It is their private information. And I apologize for bringing you into this, Mr. Buzon. So I originally submitted this to Ms. McLennan, and then I worked with it with Mr. Buzon. We actually had a really excellent meeting and discussion around the policy. And at the time, you know, he is our general counsel. He did say to me, this is a policy that we should have. And I appreciate that, and I appreciated his counsel on this. And this is the first read, and I appreciate everyone listening today, and we'll move forward.
Is there any other request for commentary at this time? Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you, Board President Sanowski. I do want to clarify what the students have complained that the dirty bathrooms. So do you think we need to acknowledge that? I would like to ask Mr. Buzon an opportunity, give him an opportunity to comment. You were assigned an opinion. Could you please comment?
Thank you, Dr. Hartwells and members of the board. It is my job as general counsel to meet by policy with individual board members to discuss policies. It is true that I've met with Vice President Warner to discuss his policy. The merits of the policy are for the board members to decide upon vote. And my position, which I believe I told Vice President Warner in our meeting, is that it's my job as legal counsel to go through the legal ramifications of that policy. And so I don't recall sharing the opinion that you stated today, but if I did, it would necessarily be irrelevant because it's for the board to decide matters of this importance. You're elected to do that.
Thank you for Mr. Buzon for clarifying you did not give legal advice along those lines. And your personal opinion is your personal opinion, but that isn't your role here this evening. Thank you.
Board Member Warner.
So it is unfortunate that you don't recall our conversation, and it is what was said. And I took it to heart, and I felt very comfortable after the meeting that we had and putting this policy forward. Had you not said the things that you had in that meeting, we would have made further modifications before putting this forward. Thank you.
Seeing that there are no other requests on this topic, we are going to move on to our consent agenda. There is required board action on this, but we're going to first discuss the items that were pulled. The first one was consent agenda item G, approve the sole and/or single source procurements for the 23-24 fiscal year. Board Member Carney.
Thank you, President Sanowski. So I asked for this item to be pulled for discussion because I don't like and don't think it's good that we have single source procurements, and especially don't want to see us spend any more money on virtual reality math programming with Prisms of Reality. We've already spent over $220,000 to try this out in 6 of our schools. 3 of our schools, Arcadia, Coronado, and Saguaro, have asked for the removal of Prisms of Reality headsets to be relocated this school year, which 2 of them have been moved to Desert Mountain High School. So that leaves Desert Mountain, Mojave, Ingleside, and Tonalea using them this year. And I think it's important, I don't know if you read the teacher feedback, but it's important to read some of their feedback. They said when we asked students, more than a few of them said they didn't see how the VR tied into the math concepts. Any attempts to tie future days and concepts to the VR failed, frequently resulting in answers like, we didn't learn anything that day. Another one says, of the students who liked using the VR headsets, many got frustrated once they had to start doing actual math and gave up. A teacher also said, when most of the class is struggling, it is very difficult to manage. So instead of approving more money for Prism's virtual reality, I recommend to the board that we look at reselling these virtual reality headsets equipment we purchased to public surplus. The district stated that middle and high school math is a priority, and we must put these funds toward educational efforts that have proven success. Thank you.
Board Member Warner.
So I had an opportunity to personally review PRISMs myself, and then also to observe a class use the PRISMs headsets, and to listen to the founder, Anarupa Ganguly, explain her opinion of, obviously she's the founder, so she finds the devices amazing. However, I have some concerns because Anarupa said that it takes 45 minutes to complete the entire module. And I understand that Ms. Dodd says that it takes 15 to 20 minutes, I believe. And if they're not using the systems as prescribed, wouldn't it be difficult if you're splitting the module into 2 days so that you're shortening the time on the devices? It just seems that it wouldn't be effective. And given our test scores have gone down, where is the evidence that PRISMs improved our students' math proficiencies and their understanding? And lastly, what was kind of sad was when I'm sure that this is really fun for kids. However, when they took their headsets off, they were rubbing their eyes. Their eyes looked exhausted from being in that headset for however long they were. So are we taking into account the amount of screen time that our students are getting during the day? So I actually agree with Board Member Carney about we should go ahead and sell the remainder of the devices and recoup some of our costs, because in my mind, I don't think that we have the evidence that PRISM's reality was successful. Thank you.
Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you, Board President Sanowski. I would like to ask Dr. Menzel, and if you would like to delegate the question, but a couple of comments now about kind of the outcomes and the impact. Could you speak to that? I think those are legitimate.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity, and I would like to invite Dr. Dodds-Karen to come forward as well. We have people who have been working with the rollout of PRISMs. This is our third year? And so we are at the beginning of year 3 of PRISMs, and so there's been a learning curve. We had good anecdotal evidence after the first year where we were doing this in 2 schools, Coronado and Tonalea, with respect to student engagement. And then I will let Dr. Dodds-Karen talk about last year and where we are this year with respect to the training and utilization and the reasons why districts, certain buildings made a decision not to continue and others invited this technology to support mathematic instruction.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Menzel. I will try to capture all of those points. Dr. Hartwells, members of the board, we have been on a journey with PRISMs for about 3 years now. This was a new idea that came to us as we are always trying to think of ways that we can engage kids meaningfully in learning. As you all know, we have a priority to shift the way that kids are thinking about math. Their demonstration of understanding is a goal area, as you know, through our KPIs. You also know that we have adopted curriculum, and we also have supplemental materials where teachers can replace units of study with alternatives. That's where PRISMs comes into play. No pun intended. The gamification of learning is something that is prime for our youth. And I do realize there are concerns for kids being on technology on a long time basis in a school day. However, when we talk about the amount of time that kids are in a module, kids are going to experience a module in a 3-part series. Typically, a module takes place over the course of 3 days. The teachers do, to Board Member Werner's point, make adjustments with the use of the virtual reality. So at first, it's truly using it to set boundaries so you don't fall out of your chair Because if you've never done virtual reality, like Board Member Werner and Carney had not done, like I hadn't, you put it on and suddenly you are somewhere else. You are no longer in the conference room, and I was an air traffic controller. You were in a hospital or on a nature hike. And so it's pretty darn cool. To the point about teachers seeing that, gosh, there's a big shift in I was playing, now I actually have to do the math, the transfer. So I go back to the supplementals. Our goal is to think about how do we introduce these concepts to kids? How do we engage them in that learning experience and then apply the mathematics? Because that way the teacher can say, when you saw, I'll be the air traffic controller, when you were launching airplanes out of the gates, you were going to the runway and you were getting somebody from Seattle down to Florida without intersecting between somebody going to Minnesota from New Mexico, what was that called? And then you can talk about coordinate graphing. And then suddenly it makes sense to them. That vocabulary, that academic vocabulary that is typically in a textbook in a yellow box highlighted, that now becomes something that makes sense to them because they experienced it. So back to the point of how did this all begin? Dr. Menzel was able to meet with Anna Rupa, and for those of you who haven't met Anna Rupa, she's quite an engaging woman. She went to MIT, she was an engineer, and she realized there were not a lot of women in engineering. And then she thought, what am I gonna do to get more women in engineering? So she became a teacher. Then she became an administrator because she wanted to inspire youth to pursue mathematics and engineering. She also realized we have a problem in America where we're going to run out of people to fulfill the jobs that are going to be needed in our country, and we're going to have to outsource from other places that are teaching advanced math and concepts. So, hence the birth of Prisms of Reality. We began Prisms here at Coronado in an algebra support class, and we also began at Tonalea in an advanced math class. We were testing it out, seeing how it was going, how could teachers be integrating it. Teachers were doing their best to integrate, and then we continued our partnership where we really looked then at our curriculum maps with Anna Rupa and one of the partners in her business, and we met and we looked at our pacing guides as it related to the Prisms modules to see what could a teacher do to substitute. Now, proud teacher, we love our lesson plans. We love our lesson plans, and we don't like to get rid of them. So it's really hard to tell a teacher that lesson that you always teach in November, put it away, and now let's try Prisms of Reality. Because they're like, but I know how my November lesson's gonna go. They don't know how Prisms is going to go. So that was one of our big hiccups in our first year, and truthfully in our second year too, is helping teachers see how can I actually buy time by substituting with Prisms of Reality. And so in our second year, we continued here at Coronado, we continued at Tonalea, and we added on some other schools. In doing that, we realized that even though teachers were excited about it, it did require a lot of time to learn it and think about how to integrate it into their classrooms. So now as we go into year 3, it's all based on choice. We approached our principals, they talked with their teachers and said, what works well for the goals we have for our students as well as the vision for our campus? For example, Arcadia. As you know, last year the board approved Arcadia becoming an AVID school. With AVID being a priority for their campus, Dr. Dansky really believed it would be important for their focus to be on that AVID curriculum. They went to Summer Institute, their teachers have their curriculum, so rather than trying to learn AVID curriculum and layer in Prisms, their focus is AVID. Here at Coronado, Principal Palatucci thought, you know what, we're pre-AP. Some of my neighboring or my partnered schools aren't going to continue it. Let's see if somebody else wants it. Desert Mountain said, we want it. They have 7 teachers, so we've taken 2 sets of carts to go up to Desert Mountain. So this year, we launched a training during an early release day. We had a full day of training. In the morning, we gave subs before the early release, and Anna Rupa came. And she provided professional development, and she said when I visited mid-morning, she said, wow, the energy is palpable. And we really think in this 3rd year, completely driven by choice, and teachers who are thinking, how can I do this differently in my classroom? I mentioned earlier too that we have a priority for increasing academic achievement. I was looking at some data from our summer school with the ASU Mac Intelligent Tutors. They gave us a report that you'll see shortly in a board memo. But when I look at some of the areas where kids, even though they were taught and practiced, didn't demonstrate mastery, I see direct relationships with our PRISMS modules. So I see things like function inputs and outputs, classifying functions and relations, rate of change in linear functions, initial value of linear functions, linear and nonlinear functions where kids were scoring at about 40% mastery rate. These are things that we can bring to life in PRISMS using an alternate curriculum different than our core text. So I don't know, Dr. Menzel, if that captured what you were looking for, but I know that it has been something different. We aren't the only district in the Valley that is utilizing virtual reality to tap into the interest of kids. I also would say, too, I think that using PRISMS introduces kids to careers because you do explore math in another way. So as an air traffic controller, as an epidemiologist, you could be any certain person when you're in that VR setting. So even though a child might say, I don't want to become a math teacher, but I want to apply math in a unique way, they could be introduced through the modules to a future career.
Thank you, Dr. Dodds, Karen. I appreciate all of that really good analysis, and thanks for sharing that with us. Interesting timing. It's the first week of October, which can only mean it's Nobel Prize announcements, and every one of those groundbreaking recipients suffered ridicule at the beginning of their exploration. So I think that that's an interesting connection. But thank you for answering the question.
Thank you.
Board Member Carney?
How much did we spend on the recent professional development for that?
Would you like to just stay up there until we're done?
For a moment, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Our professional development is a package where we are able to bring in presenters and Arupa to come into our schools to do model lessons as well. So our entire package, I believe, is $1,200, $1,250. Let me look at the invoice. $1,250, I believe. I'm sorry, $15,000 for six full-day visits.
Okay, and then you mentioned the other local districts are using this. Which school districts are using this?
Yep, that's a great question. A variety. Specific to Prisms of Reality, Mesa Public Schools is using Prisms of Reality. They have been using it in 7-8 like we have been in our middle schools. They've expanded to 9-12. They also have the science, but they have not accessed the science yet. Others that are using VR but not specific prisms, Flagstaff uses Nearpod and Act 1 as well. Those are two different products. Paradise Valley uses Vive and Oculus, which is a type of device. Alhambra uses Class VR, which is part of their Verizon Innovation Learning Lab. So they must have a grant through Verizon. Also, Mesa uses another called Transfer.
Okay, thank you, because I had been told that Mesa was not using prisms, but that was another question that I had, because this is a sole procurement, but yet we just named off other companies that are doing this work, and I know we're already paying for Nearpod, and they have virtual reality math programming. Why are we?
So let me clarify that. So Flagstaff is using Nearpod for field trips. Flagstaff is also using Act 1 for 5th grade, where kids are visiting places like Mexico, Chicago, Tucson, again, virtual field trips. Paradise Valley using the Vive, pardon my pronunciation of it, and Oculus. It's used in a computers course with juniors and seniors. It's a computer science program. And it's used to create their senior capstone project. And then Transfer, also used by Mesa, is career exploration. So not a math platform.
Okay, I just believe we only have so much time, so much money. We have to be great stewards of the funds, and I just don't think spending more money, $50,000 on Prism's virtual reality is a wise choice.
Board Member Warner?
So you You did a great sales job. So having met Anarupa, she is very compelling and she's very passionate about her project. And so I would imagine that she did a great job for that professional development and engaging the teachers and so on. My challenge with it is that we don't know the efficacy rates of the students using it. And so spending more money on it just doesn't make sense until we have results. And, you know, if the kids are learning and they're getting more proficient and their understanding is increasing, that's awesome, then we can move forward. But spending more money on it until we know that doesn't make sense. Last question, is it 15,000 for Anarupa to come? Or is it overall?
Overall, 15,000.
Okay, thank you.
To wrap up the commentary on this particular item, I had engaged the last 2 years, the very first year and then the second year, and see this pilot expand to other places was interesting because there were middle school kids and high school kids both using the same resources. And I also participated with the virtual reality, and it was challenging. There was definitely a learning curve to using the devices. And then afterwards, I mean, I had my own opinions about it, but afterwards, what I felt was really important was asking the teachers who were instructing the classes and engaging with the students afterwards and asking them from their opinions right then and there in the classroom. And it was all positive of students saying they really liked it, it was exciting, it was engaging. And the teachers to say to me, there were students who would not typically engage in traditional math lessons that were highly engaged in this PRISM's virtual reality. I appreciate the fact that this is not a one-size-fits-all school district, that we are allowing our teachers to choose supplemental materials to support their good, solid instruction. I know Board Member Carney pulled this item. Would you like to make a motion? Dr. Harwells, I see you request to speak.
I'd like to make a motion.
All right, go ahead.
To approve item 7G.
I would second that. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No. No.
That motion passes 3-2. Moving on to 7I, approve the award of request for proposal RFP 24008, in-person tutoring for the 23-24 school year. Board Member Warner, pull that. Go ahead.
Thank you. I have just a clarification on this. This was something that I had recommended for an agenda item and it ultimately went to an RFP. And my question is, well, number one, I'm surprised that we chose a nationwide company as opposed to a local company here in Arizona that really knows our students and the needs here. But my question is, you know, I hear a lot, and I did this for my own kids, is teachers like to tutor, and it's an opportunity for them to make extra money. Many tutoring companies will fill spots with teachers in order to not only work with the students because they're hands-on with them already and they know the curriculum, they know the students, so it's very helpful and I think it's beneficial for the student. And it gives them that opportunity to earn more money. So will Universal extend this option to our teachers? That's my question.
So Roger Spivey is here. He's our Director of Procurement. He can talk about the process and what was included in the RFP and how we landed on the recommendation in front of you.
I actually didn't need all of that. Like, I don't have a problem with Universal. I just this was my specific question.
Awesome. Good evening,
Yeah,
Governing
thank
Board,
you.
President Snowski, Vice President Warner. Regarding your questions, so one, we did not ask them to look at our current employees as tutors.
Okay.
They do have 3,400 regional employees available that they can choose from. But when you talk about vendors starting to hire our staff, we run into conflict of interest problems. Now, every one of those employees would have a conflict related to this contract because they would have financial impact based on the usage of this contract. So while I really like the idea of our teachers tutoring, I really would encourage us not to do that using a third party.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Dr. Benson, go ahead.
Madam President and Vice President Warner, I appreciate you highlighting that we do want to encourage and continue to encourage our own teachers to offer tutoring services too, because that is still at play. We very much know that research shows the relationships with our teachers and students and the consistency in working with them is very valuable. And so that doesn't go away. This is an additional layer that had been requested for where we've got maybe not enough teachers that can provide enough tutoring services. So this is an additional in-person layer. So we haven't replaced and would never want to replace the work that our teachers do with our students. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Board Member Carney.
Thank you, President Sinowski. Okay, so that was one of my questions, is that we will be protecting the current teachers who are doing before or after school tutoring, prioritizing them. My concern is that what happens when they learn that these university tutors are making more money, are being paid more money than them? Is this going to cause issues?
Roger, are you okay with me taking a shot at this one? So appreciate the question. Part of the complexity and maybe even the opportunity here is that this doesn't have to be just before or after school tutoring. This tutoring service can happen in small groups or during the school day. And that's part of the richness of this opportunity, is that we have extra support that can provide and be helping out during the contracted school day. So the scope and the amount of teachers or certified teachers that are available to help us out, not just before or after school, it can be contracted during the day for a plethora of areas. Doesn't just have to be isolated to just ELA and math, can provide supports in other areas. And we know that the high dosage tutoring that's gonna work is when we situate those experiences as a small group daily, repetitively. So that's the kind of thing we're looking to schedule in conjunction and in support of our teachers. So appreciate the clarifying question, not in competition of.
Okay, and this will all be in person. And how is this going to work with the, the varsity tutors contract that we already have and already have? How is this going to work working with them?
So we're meeting Thursday, pending board approval, to schedule and structure requests that we've had from sites about what they'd like this to look like. And we've already got varsity tutors up and running in certain areas. As you know, we have a cap on that for $150,000. We are also using that with our student services team too. So there's a place for both, and just being very targeted and thoughtful, not random in our tutoring assignments across our schools.
Okay, great. I think if the board could get a report on, both varsity and all tutoring going on, that would be fantastic, so we can understand. I also, Dr. Menzel, would like to see a survey go out to parents asking if their child has been using tutoring through the school or an outside vendor, I think, and asking what subjects they've been getting tutoring in, and if they're paying out of pocket, or how is the child's tutoring, funded, and what do they see as needs for their child. I think, I hear from a lot of parents that they're getting outside tutoring, or, I just think it would be really good to get a pulse on our families and what they're already doing and what they need.
Board Member Carney, I really appreciate that last sentiment that you made, that it's important for us to realize that one size does not fit all for our students' needs. Some of our options and opportunities we provide to our students are 24/7 access. Some are before school, some are during the actual instructional time period. Some are at lunch and some are after school. And I do believe that we have more need for outside support than we have teachers available to tutor our students. Is that correct, Dr. Benson?
I think that's a statewide problem.
Yeah.
Agreed. Teachers are working really hard, and
Yep.
it's difficult to commit 3-4 days extra after school or before school a week. We do have teachers that do it, and we want to continue that. But yes, in terms of scope and availability, there's a need to pursue and identify other tutors that can help us.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to recognize what's working, what's not, and what the needs are of the community. Thank you for bringing that up. Would you like to make a motion? Board Member Warner?
Yep, I make a motion to approve Agenda 7I.
I second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 5-0. We are going to move on to 7K. I pulled that item at the request of Alexis Wilson. Ms. Wilson, would you like to make comment on it?
Thank you. President Sinowski, members of the Governing Board, and Dr. Menzel, due to a clerical error, we are requesting a modification to the personnel action items to approve all of the sections with the exception of the classified section under the employee compensation action section. This will not cause any delay in employees being paid on time and accurately.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Do governing board members, does anyone have any questions for Ms. Wilson? Okay, pretty clear cut. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve all sections of the personnel action items with the exception of the classified section under the employee compensation actions. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor, say aye. Aye. That motion passes 5-0. At that time, we have approved our consent agenda. And we are going to move on to 8A, action item, approval of fiscal year 22-23 annual financial report, also known as the AFR. Shannon.
All right. Thank you, Board Member Sinowski, Vice President Warner, members of the board, Dr. Menzel, and guests. It's a night of financial updates for last year for us. So I want to start out by saying the annual financial report is a pretty massive report that the state puts out every year for school districts to report their expenditures and revenues. And so I can't thank our Director of Finance enough, Lisa Martinez, and her team. She has put in quite a bit of time, several weekends, working on this report. And unfortunately, part of the report wasn't released by the state until late Friday afternoon. And so we'll be bringing the school-by-school report to the board possibly later this week. As we were not able to get that complete with the time that it was released. There just wasn't enough time to get that part completed into the board for us to present that part of it tonight. So with this, we have the annual financial report. It is a detailed report of the revenues expenditures that their district had for last year. It provides our state and taxpayers with detailed information on how the funds were spent, and it is required to be presented to the board by October 15th. Just kind of an overview of last year, our average daily membership was 20,103.76. Again, this is a ADM or average daily membership, so that's why you get the odd 0.76 within it or point numbers within it. The base support level, or the amount we receive for M&O per student, was $4,775.27. So we had a M&O, or maintenance and operations budget, of $183.8 million. We had a capital budget, which includes capital from the state as well as our override, of $29.7 million. And then federal projects of $37.7 million. A big portion of that is the ESSER funds. ESSER 1 ended in September of last year, but for last year we had ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, so we'll start to see those federal projects go down pretty significantly as we close out those ESSER projects. This is just a summary. Like I said, the AFR is pretty extensive. There's lots of pages on it that go into a little bit more detail, and that will be posted on the website for anybody to see. This breaks down the summary of it by the different funds. And you'll notice there's numbers up across the top, and that's to explain how to read some of this as we go through the next slides. And there's lots of funds, so it's 2 pages. All right, so the first one, we have some accounts that are budget controlled, which means the state says you get X amount of dollars per student for that, or you get X amount of dollars within a grant. And it doesn't matter what the cash balance is. If you have more cash in M&O, it doesn't mean that you get to spend more than what your budget was approved for. The state says this is how much budget you have. So when we look at this, and I'll kind of talk about how this plays into it, M&O is a budget-driven fund. So what our budgeted from our budget approved amount from the state and our expenses, what we have carry forward is what we can carry forward. So last year we had a $183.8 million budget. We spent $169.8 million of that, leaving a budget balance carry forward of $13.9 million. We were shooting for 14, or just slightly underneath that, after everything played out. That is about 7.6% of the budget, which is within our governing board approved regulation on minimum maximums for carry forward. We've talked a lot about what should carry forward look like, how much should that be, what percentage, what dollar, and it varies. 7.6 is pretty consistent with where we've been percentage-wise. It's $1 higher, or actually it's lower than what it was last year, but percentage-wise where we see other districts, I would say the carry forward is not like it's $13 million or $14 million sitting in an unallocated account that we could just reuse for something else. We're carrying over that because we're not filling every single position within M&O. Or we're not spending, we budget for utility, we don't actually spend as much as we think. So we have carry forward, not because there's a pot of money somewhere that we're just not spending. It's because we're budgeting for all of these things that we think we're going to do. We're just not spending it all. As we bring that down, then that means the following year we have less money to spend, which means cuts. So we've kind of said 14 million seems to be the good area to be at. We've kind of projected that for the next couple of years as what would be the balance forward. So the way we get that is, if you look at this previous slide, column 5 and 6 is your budgeted expenditures and your actual expenditures. That's what tells us our budget carry forward. Now, because this is a budgeted account, you'll see on this prior page, we're actually carrying our budget ending, or I'm sorry, our ending balance in M&O is actually $14.1 million. That column 7 is literally looking at what was our beginning cash balance, how much revenues did we get, so column 2, column 3, minus column 6 to get that $14.1 million. Again, that doesn't mean we have $14 million to carry over. That means that's what our cash balance is. The fact that our cash balance is pretty close to what our ending budget balance is means we're right on target with our cash and our expenditures. Then we have cash controlled accounts. So an example of one of those is our community education or community schools. Community schools started out this last year with $3.6 million. They had $7.5 million come in. It's actually a little higher because they had a special grant come in for some preschool programs. It was a $1.8 million or so. So that revenue is actually higher than normal, or what it has been in the past couple of years. No transfers, that's fine. And then $6.7 million of expenditures, leaving their ending fund balance at $4.5 million. That is cash, so that rolls over. It doesn't get moved somewhere else or swept somewhere else. The balance of that $4.5 million stays within that cash account. So that's just kind of how to read that summary page and understand, like I said, some things are cash driven, or I'm sorry, budget driven. That's gonna be your M&O account, your capital account, grants, those types of things. Your community schools, plant fund, civic center, rentals, those are going to be your cash accounts, where you're looking at how much cash do we have, and that is all we have. This is just looking at an estimate. Every year, the Auditor General's Office puts out what's called the classroom spending report for every district in Arizona. It always comes out on March 1st. It's a nice little birthday present for me every year. And it tells us exactly where we are with our classroom spending from the prior year, as well as how we compare with our other districts. One of the things we like to do when we're looking at the AFR is kind of take a look ourselves and see where we think we're gonna land. So with that in mind, this is just looking at an estimate of what we think that will look like when it comes out in March. We're generally pretty close. I will say last year we were off a little bit. It was food services and plant. I don't know if something got classified differently than we thought it should have been, but there was a variance between those two, but from what we estimated in the actual. So we're generally pretty close. I am happy to say that the classroom instruction appears to have gone up some. We anticipated that to happen because last year it had gone down due to some changes we made with performance pay as well, or with a 301 performance pay for teachers, as well as we knew that some of our more experienced teachers with longer years were retiring or leaving the field, and they were being replaced with teachers with less experience. We could see that in the change in our teacher experience index rate. It also shows when they do that classroom spending report, they'll show you how many teachers you have in the first 3 years. That number had declined for us in fiscal year 22. So that's why it brought some of that classroom spending down. I am happy to say it's up, or we think it's going to be up for last year. And then as a whole within total instruction, so classroom instruction is strictly looking at the teacher in the classroom. That is the only thing within classroom instruction. Instructional support is your librarian, instructional development that may happen, and then student support is like nurses, social workers, guidance counselors. With COVID money and some additional grants that we received, they were for things like guidance counselors. So when you see like in FY22 that made a pretty significant jump in that area, it's because we had grants that were designated specifically for student support. And this classroom spending doesn't look at just M&O, it's looking at pretty much every single fund. There are a couple exceptions, but it's pretty much every single fund within our general ledger. So they look at that, they combine those three and say, how much is total instruction? So good part is, again, we went up in the total instruction. I think we can do more. We always want to strive to do to do better, get that number up higher. But I'm happy to say that it looks like it went up from last year, so that's a positive trend. Administration went down slightly. It's been in that 9% range pretty consistently over the last 5 years. And the thing with administration is it's not like a director that's the administrator or a principal that's the administrator. When it's looking at these things, like student support could also, instructional support, because it's instructional development, includes our curriculum department. So like the director of curriculum would be categorized as instructional support. When you're looking at administration, that's looking at every single person within a function group for general administration. So that's looking at principals, assistant principals, but also their classified staff that report to them. The people in the finance staff who may not be administrators, they're classified hourly workers, but they're considered administration in this report. Food services has gone up a little bit. I think that just has to do with food costs have also gone up as we've progressed through the year. Plant operations, I was really surprised. Seems to have gone down some, and that was surprising to me because one of the things that feeds into plant operations is security, and we know that we've been increasing our spend within security. So plant operations isn't just our utilities, it's not just the groundskeepers or facility upkeep, it also includes that security part, so the security guards, any cameras, security enhancements we do there. So I was kind of surprised that it didn't go up more, or that it went down, or appears to have gone down. And then transportation, again, has been staying relatively flat within that 3%, but we do know that fuel costs went up this last year. So that's kind of the estimate of where we think we're gonna land within that report. Like I said, it'll be March 1st before that comes out. Within M&O, this just looks at how do we spend our money. So within just our M&O expenses, salary and benefits makes up 90% of our budget, or our expenditures, which makes sense. It takes teachers and people to support those teachers to educate students. And then utilities is 5%. So really at 95%, we're pretty fixed with the salaries, benefits, and utilities that we don't really have a choice on those utilities. And then a small percentage goes to purchase services. I want to point out with that number, part of that is our contracted services. We have a lot of people who are contracted out because we can't hire paras or some special needs teachers. They end up being contracted out, as well as we have a lot of transportation contracted out. That all fits within there. And then we have employees who retire and go what's on ESI and come back in their same job. And so that also fits in there. So I was thinking, wow, that's 12.8 million for purchase services, but a lot of that is because of our contracts that we are contracted services that we have out there for staff. And then the last part I talked about is we say that 85% of our budget is, or expenditures are, salary. So within those salaries, 67% of that is certified, 21% of that is classified, and 12% of that is administrative. And again, that includes principals, assistant principals, and then other administrators. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thanks, Shannon. At this time, do governing board members have comments or questions for Shannon on this topic? Dr. Hartwells?
Thank you, Board President Sanowski. Thank you, Ms. Crozier. I have a, can we go to slide 8, please?
Sure.
Thank you. And thank you for numbering your slides. Where does the ESSER spend fit in here?
So ESSER goes into all of this. You could have ESSER spend within classroom because we have teachers we added SOL teachers with ESSER dollars when we expanded that to K-8. So ESSER dollars could be mixed in with instructional classroom. We used ESSER dollars to help with instructional support. And so you can see it within there. So it really is going to vary. I would say the majority of it, and partly because ESSER 3, the majority of it has to be spent on instructional or instructional support, is going to be within those top 3 categories. But it's kind of sprinkled in throughout this report. So there's not one specific area that it would fall into, but could be within any of those.
Okay, so it's in the totals?
Yes.
Dispersed in the appropriate
Absolutely.
categories?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Board Member Kearney.
Thank you, President Sanowski. Thank you, Ms. Crozier. I just have a couple questions on purchase services. So I know I've been talking about this with you a little bit and would like to see a report, but I'm just concerned on, let's take central services, for example. That and support services both have doubled in our spending since 2019, according to these AFRs. What types of things are falling under these purchase services?
So as I was talking before, the purchase service, a lot of that is going to be things like a contractor that we bring in to do. So if we, like I said, if we don't have a special needs nurse or a personal care nurse that's required for an IEP, we might have to contract that out. If we don't have, we've had to do a lot of paras because we haven't had paras. And so that would end up being within the student support, but it's a purchase service because we're paying another company for that. The same thing, we do well over $1 million with ESI, with employees that aren't, they've retired from the district, but they still want to continue to fill those roles. And so it's really going to fall into the, without going into looking at every purchase, there's a lot that we're doing contracted services for positions that we just can't fill with our own staff.
Okay. And
custodial is a huge one. Thank you. Custodial is, because we also added custodial ABM cleaning. Custodial is like $4 million of that. We started during COVID, we're actually ending it this year, but we were adding, in addition to our regular contract with them, we added additional cleaning at lunchtime.
Okay.
So that's a huge portion of it right there, is the contracted custodial.
Okay, and then within that report that you had sent the board, like I said, it was 500 and some pages, I think, so I couldn't get through too many of them. But where I saw one of them was City of Scottsdale. We're paying them $360,000 4 times. What is that for?
We have the City of Scottsdale Police for the SROs. Off the top, I'm thinking that's probably, generally what we're paying the City of Scottsdale for is either utility, or there's it's over $1 million for our SROs through that.
Okay, so
So City of Scottsdale's likely going to be SROs.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Shannon, thank you for clarifying the different categories, the expenditure categories, again for us. And can you restate the purpose of the practice of the carry forward? What would happen if we zeroed out that number? How would that impact our district?
Absolutely. That's Board President Sinowski. Yes, if we decided we're going to spend our entire budget this year, so our budget's like 193 million, 96 million. If we were going to spend that entire budget this year and not carry that over, because we've had that carry forward year after year after year, that 196 million has 14 million in carryover factored in. So you would start out next year $14 million less than what you had this year. So essentially, if we don't continue to carry that over, if we don't slowly bring that down, then you're going to see a $14 million hit right off the bat the following year.
Sure, thank you. And I would like to really have us focus on creating plans to increase a direct classroom instruction spending level, at least bringing it back up to the 2021 level that is posted here. I know there are a lot of variants in that, but I think we have the needs and we should be addressing those. When we talk about attracting and retaining best staff, that's a good expenditure in my mind. Thank you. Seeing that there are no other requests to speak, I would like to make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual financial report. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And I need to apologize. We did not approve the complete consent agenda as amended individually. We approved the individual topics that were pulled, but I'd like to make a motion at this time to go back and approve the amended consent agenda. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor, say aye. Aye. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you, guys. We are going to, at this time, move on to 8B, which is a second read and approval of Governing Board Policy BEDD, and Dr. Hartwells is leading that discussion.
Thank you, Board President Sinowski. We've seen this in a first read, and there was discussion at that time, and I have nothing further to add. I think the amendment speaks for itself, and again, is not, like we addressed the concerns about being overly burdensome, that it's really a safety net as guidance as a third tier where there is porosity in the existing law and/or policies, and then secondly, again, in an effort at civility. And so I'd like to make a motion to approve the second read and approval of the Governing Board Policy BEDD regarding rules of order as amended.
I'd like to make a second to that motion. This time we'll take a vote on that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
That motion does not pass. It's denied 3-2. We're going to move on to Governing Board reports right now. That's 9 on our agenda. At this time, just a reminder for all Governing Board members, please keep your report to 2 minutes or less. Are there Governing Board reports to share at this time? Board Member Carney.
Thank you, President Sinowski. So I was fortunate to be able to attend Echo Canyon's Color Run last week, and it was so much fun seeing the school leaders, teachers, and parents all having fun. I even got to participate and shoot the students with the chalk or whatever the stuff was. We just had a lot of fun. And I still smile thinking of Assistant Principal Cadera, how funny she was, having so much fun. And so I think that we forget, too, that, our schools are time to have fun as well with the students. So that was a lot of fun. I also got to tour Laguna Elementary and got to go review the new ELA curriculum options. And I know the committee is narrowing that down to one curriculum tomorrow, so I want to make sure that everyone knows parents know they still can go review the curriculum each weekday at Laguna Elementary during school days, and that information is on our website. And then one other opportunity for parents, they do have the ability to sign up for the Lightspeed Parent Portal, which enables them to see what sites their child is going on during the school day, as well as better control the use of their SUSD device at home. So Ms. Watt gave me the information and told me that parents can learn more and sign up by calling the IT Help Desk, which is 480-484-HELP-4357. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Warner?
So I took the opportunity to go to Laguna and review the curriculum for K through 5 ELA adoption, and I agree with Board Member Warner, Board Member Carney, that if you are a parent or a grandparent, I highly recommend you go and review. It's eye-opening how much things have changed, and they are narrowing it down to one tomorrow. So if you go after that, it'll be easy. And they're open from 9 to 3, and you can just show up at Laguna, and Ms. Murphy is amazing.
Any others? Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you, Board President Sanowski. I would like to thank all of those folks in the community who attended the town halls to learn the facts on the district's request for a continuation of the M&O override. And I actually want to thank the district as well for hosting those 5 town halls. Based on the 3 that I attended, there were attendees who did not have students in our district schools, and they were likely the demographic that you were targeting. So I think that was actually very constructive and a good use of time, and particularly for those of you that attended on the staff after hours. It was late evenings, a few of those. Related, I wish to thank all of our community and business leaders who have taken the time to share your thoughts as contributing editors on the M&O override, our local newspapers. And I want to thank Principal Olney and the COCOPA staff for hosting me a few weeks ago, and I got to listen in on some of the planning for the student assembly with the student leadership, observe some of the positive pats on the back for our students who went above and beyond, and many positive comments. I actually stood with Principal Olney as the students were leaving that day, and there were numerous students who came up to him asking about teachers and giving compliments to teachers. It was really heartwarming. I realize I am a guest and a visitor when I make those visits, and I appreciate sincerely the time that the staff take to plan those visits ahead of time, that all of us make, actually, and that is a little bit of an imposition. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hartwells. And I would like to share my appreciation for the many organizations and individuals in our community who continually work on behalf to improve the needs and interests of our students, our employees, and the future of this community. Yes to Children is one that's been around almost a quarter of a century in this community, and they work diligently to try to secure necessary funds, which provide us a chance to attain our goals on behalf of our students and our employees. We are better together and working towards our common cause, and that is because kids. At this time, I'd like to open it up to governing board members for future agenda items. Are there any requests at this time? Board Member Carney.
Thank you, President Sanowski. I would just like to ask, I know that we amended policy BEDB, the agenda policy, to only go to 2 minutes for board or governing board reports, but I would just ask if we could just be respectful of that time and not actually run a timer on the elected officials. That would be appreciated.
Board Member Warner? Sorry, Board Member Warner.
I would like to see a study or research so we can get some type of idea how much our students are spending on screen time. So whether that is computers, it's virtual reality, and I know the smart boards are also screen time now, the lights are dimmed and so on. So I think that parents would really value knowing how much time their children are spending on screen time.
Just to clarify, you're talking about while they're in school, correct?
While they're in school.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you. I would like to request an update on the Coronado Learning Community efforts. There was a phase 1, and now I'm assuming we're still in a phase 2. But if we could also include in that update, whether it's a memo or a presentation, whatever is your choice, but expenditures on the phase 1, as well as the efforts and the budget for phase 2, including impact on enrollment, which I think was one of the stated goals, including specifically the number of students that are moving from buildings from 5 to 6, and then from 8 to 9 within the learning community. And then, of course, it would also be, I think, appropriate to round it out with academic achievement elements as well. Thank you.
All right. Everyone's had an opportunity to, I see some lights on again. Everyone's had an opportunity to, Board Member Carney.
Thank you. Sorry, I'd made a comment and I didn't continue on with my, what I'd like to see on an agenda item. I would like to see the report that I asked for last meeting on social emotional learning programs that are in the district and that are at each school. Which social emotional learning programs are they using? What curriculum? And I know Shannon Cron was, I think, looking into that, working on that.
Didn't we receive that
Thank
in a
you.
memo? I thought we received that already. Okay. I thought we received that information through a B memo with all the SEL programs.
It's in draft. I don't think we sent it.
Okay.
We're close.
Okay, thank you.
Coming to you soon.
Thank
All
you.
right. Seeing that there are no other requests at this time, I'd like to announce the upcoming meeting dates. Our next governing board meeting is Tuesday, October 24th, 2023, 6 p.m. That would be here at, that is at the Mojave District Annex, because that would be a special governing board meeting. And then Tuesday, November 4th, we have a regular governing board meeting back here at Coronado High School. Yes, 14th. I'm racing through this, sorry. And then learning community town halls. Wednesday, October 25th, there will be one at Chaparral High School in the auditorium at 6 p.m. Tuesday, November 7th, 6 p.m., Coronado High School auditorium. Thursday, February 22nd, 2024, 6 p.m., Desert Mountain High School Library. And Wednesday, March 20th, 2024, 6 p.m., Saguaro High School Innovation Center. Also to note, we will have a special governing board meeting through Teams on Thursday, October 5th. That's in 2 days at 5:30 to approve the school-by-school plan. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Is there a second? Dr. Hartwells?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion to approve the adjournment has been made.